and there was this enormous outrage. And of course, that has hit him hard. But one of the things they said is, oh, he's a brand ambassador for Snapdeal, so uninstall the Snapdeal ad. Okay, and they started down rating Snapdeal. Give it 1-star rating everywhere, wherever it exists. So November 23, when this started, Snapdeal was number 25. After this outpouring of outrage, it moved up the ranks to number 20, and number 4 in shopping apps up to number 3. It shot up. Okay, Snapdeal, whatever publicity it was doing, couldn't have done this. So if you get a hang of what this does on digital and social media, this was a shopper card. Now this is the reverse side of the Streisand effect. I don't know if they intended to do this, but this was a hoarding, one or two hoardings in the South, which has my personal shopper, easy shop card, so easy even she can use it, right? Nicely sexist, misogynist, everything rolled into one little hoarding. That was it, one hoarding. But there was an explosion of outrage. This hoarding was all over Twitter, Facebook, Look at this, how horribly misogynistic. But the fact is they reached out with zero advertising, with one hoarding. And that hoarding was published, it was carried in the newspapers, it was shown on television, it was carried all over social media. So again, I'm not saying that they intended that, but it was a maybe sort of happy outcome of what they did. Politicians use that all the time. Just say something dramatic. This one said, sometimes rape is right, sometimes it's wrong. Okay. And this was the Independent, UK, Washington Post, Time, Newsweek, everybody covered him. Okay, that, how can somebody say something so stupid? But if he was an obscure politician who would never be in the international headlines, was suddenly in the international headlines in 24 hours. For whatever, for what it's worth. So, very brave new world out there. I'm not going to go through all of this. I've covered some of this here. But there's a lot of stuff you can do. It helps, and as you increasingly scale up, you'll probably begin to use professionals to do a lot of these things. But it's great to be able to get a handle on many of the things which you can do to be there personally out there in the social and digital world, to get a sense of what people are saying and what they're talking about, what the narratives are, what the storyline is. And I keep reiterating this, that the storyline is usually not your product, because nobody gives a damn about your product unless it is so extraordinarily good, and only you will and your mother might believe that, but the people who haven't tried your product are not going to believe that, because everybody comes, every journalist also gets a flood of people saying that, oh, my product, my app, you've got to try it once, you'll be a convert or whatever. But the narrative is around that area. If you can, so for example, I showed you in the beginning this snapshot of the apps, yesterday's apps thing. That's a very interesting story. I bet many of you haven't seen that list and that rank. And so I just did this for this presentation this morning, and I put it out on Twitter, and it's got dozens and dozens of retweets, comments, engagement. Now imagine if you're a company involved in the apps or internet space, why would you not want to report on that or want to mention that, this is what the apps are looking like. Hey, it's interesting that my area, which is whatever, retail or news or something, is not there in the top 10 or 20. Okay. But most people won't, most startups or most companies won't do that, because they'll say, hey, this is not about my product. I should only talk about my product. So I'm saying, no, don't talk about your product. Try and get the world to talk about your product, and see if you can talk about the domain, the arena, give information which people will want to take viral. And finally, I'll just drill this down in my last slide to what I'll call here just the 3 idiots, the 3 little things for dummies or whatever. What's your story? Okay. When you are conveying, communicating, if you just take it through these 3 filters, what's the story, and why should the reader care, why should the editor care? Most of the releases, most of the campaigns, most of the things that you send out will probably be killed right there, or they'll be filtered into something which makes a little more sense. Who's telling the story? And that's critically important. That's why it really helps if you, as those of you who are founders, co-founders, CTOs, are able to internalize this and be there in the narrative and the storytelling. because individuals, and you'll see a lot of startups, which maybe the areas are hot. Take information security. So there's several startups in the information security space where the founders, they've got a great deal of coverage with doing zero publicity, simply because you keep having, the moment there is a break-in somewhere, some site has been hacked, Pakistani hackers or Indian hackers have cracked something in Pakistan, Chinese hackers have attacked the Rashtrapati Bhavan site. Whatever it is, people are desperately looking for experts to comment, and these few experts, they've started commenting. Okay, they're not talking about their product or service, but they are seen as experts. And when that happens, you've taken a very important first step. If you are seen as experts in your domain, and as you know, when you go for funding, that's one of the key things investors look for too. They don't, they're not looking so much as your product, as the team, the people, the belief that they could put into you, and your passion about that space. So if you can demonstrate that, that's a huge thing, and that absolutely applies equally well to the storytelling, to the communication, to the leverage of digital for scaling up your business. And to whom are you telling it? Okay, who is it? If it's a media house you're going to, do you know their readers? And is that reader your customer? If not, should you be wasting time going there? Should you figure out how you can build? Are you reaching a small community? If so, do you want to go more like B2B? Do you want to go through a LinkedIn? Do you want to develop a small core influencer community of 10, 15, 20 people instead of trying to reach out to much larger audiences? So that's a kind of little wrap up of the digital world and leveraging digital. And I really find that whether, whatever space you're in, if you're able to actually take charge of the storytelling and the narrative and, get across the fact that you are experts, it's a great starting platform for making your product or service itself a bestseller. That's it. Any questions? Happy to take up.
Okay, the question is around, there are so many, places you can find information, and there are so many places where you can put information. Okay, so, is there a way do you recommend a way to prioritize? At the same time, when you are, looking for information, again, there is plethora of, things which to read. What do you recommend?
So, first thing there is, I think people are really looking for focus and for experts. And traditionally, for example, that's why media has had a very important role, mainstream media, because they're supposed to be the experts channeling and filtering information. So similarly here, now with an explosion of, everybody is an expert on Twitter, on Facebook, everybody is commenting on politics and everything, but people are still looking for expertise. Look at product purchases. People still trust peer information more than anything else. Okay, and among peer groups, there's typically somebody who settles down to being the local expert. He may be anywhere between 0 and 10 on the global scale of expert rating, but for that group, for that peer group, he's the local expert. So if you are able to focus and build on your expertise, okay, then it really doesn't matter on the platform, and that platform you could choose, depending on how avant-garde you want to be and what cutting edge you want to be, or you want to use one of the traditional platforms. But the key thing is to really pick out and focus on your domain and see what is the domain, and that domain should ideally be, if it's for an individual who is engaging, supposing you are engaging and you are founder, CTO, whatever, it should be something of personal passion to you. And ideally that should be directly connected to your product or service area. It may not always be, but it always works when the subject area is of personal direct correlation and equation at a personal level, and not just at the product or service market that you're in. So that really works. So focus on the area that you're passionate about. Begin to be known as a domain expert in that area. Okay, so that people come back to you for that. And then, however small, you might have a follower count of 1,000 or 2,000, but focus on quality in that so that you can engage with a few media people, a few other influencers in that. That's how you can amplify. Okay, so that when you say something, that it will reach maybe only 100 people, but those 100 will be the right people to influence, and they could include journalists and other people who would take that message forward.